Doom is one of my favorite games of all time, so naturally I'm quite privy to id Software's other franchises. But Wolfenstein has a tendency to vary in quality with each new installment. I was a big fan of Machine Games' The New Order and the Old Blood, but was severely disappointed in the new Colossus. A game that, in my opinion, is probably the worst in the franchise, and was an absolute infuriating experience to play compared to other recent big shooter releases like Doom 2016 and Titanfall 2. Wolfenstein Youngblood is the latest release in the series and releases on Nintendo Switch on July 26th, just like all the other versions of the game. It continues what I assume is the pattern for Wolfenstein's game releases, with a mainline installment with the word new somewhere in the title, and some kind of standalone spin-off with blood in the title. But unlike the last spin-off, The Old Blood, which was just a prequel to The New Order with little changes to gameplay, Youngblood is an almost radically different game compared to the new Colossus. You may have noticed that this video is an impressions video, and that's because I've only just started to really sink my teeth into this game, and the full game is actually somewhat lengthy, as the game's executive producer says it should take at least 25 to 30 hours to beat. And I want to say I'm about 6 to 8 hours in, so instead I'll be talking about what I've played so far and what I think of the Switch port, as opposed to my full thoughts. The story is that it has been 20 years since the events of the new Colossus, and the Resistance has liberated America from the Nazis with the help of BJ Blazkowicz. The Nazis still occupy Europe, and BJ has spontaneously gone missing. In this game, you play as Soph and Jess Blazkowicz, BJ's daughters, and you travel to Paris to help the Resistance liberate France while also looking for your missing dad. Right off the bat, I feel like a lot has been improved from the new Colossus, possibly due to Youngblood being developed by not just Machine Games, but also Arcane Studios, who are known for the Dishonored games and the recent Prey reboot. The new Colossus had a lot of problems in regards to the game's direction, story, and overall design. Whereas the new Colossus tried too hard to be overtly comical and in your face, Youngblood seems to be a lot more subdued in its attempts at comedy, and thus doesn't feel quite so annoying. Soph and Jess have plenty of one-liners and goofy moments, but it doesn't feel like they're always actively trying to make you laugh and fail at doing so. But ultimately what matters is the gameplay, and there's plenty that has been improved. Whereas the new Colossus had you spend over half the game with severely limited health and armor, Youngblood starts you off with plenty and ways of quickly increasing it. You can no longer overcharge health and armor from pickups. Instead, you overcharge by giving your co-op partner a big thumbs up or devil's horns. Oh yeah, this game has co-op, by the way. You don't need to play the game with a second player. I've been mostly playing the game offline with the semi-competent AI partner, but the game does feature seamless online, where whoever you want to play with, whether it be friends or randos, can drop in or out at any time. Returning to gameplay, movement has also been improved, as your characters seem to feel a bit more responsive, and certain abilities like the bashing move and double jump from New Colossus have returned with a bit more freedom and functionality added to it. Same can be said about the guns. There's not only more, but all of the guns can be fleshed out and upgraded. All of this comes from the fact that Youngblood isn't exactly a linear shooter like the previous Wolfenstein games, but is more of an RPG shooter in the vein of Arcane's Dishonored, Far Cry, or id Software's Rage. You're no longer fighting in tight corridors. Instead, levels are these semi-open environments that you repeatedly bounce between and open up more the longer you play. You're given some kind of mission or objective, you travel to that part of the world, you make your way to what you need to do, and you receive XP and coins from shooting enemies and exploring. Said XP and coins go into leveling up your character and guns, which lead to new abilities and upgrades. It's a familiar grind that's been quite popular this generation, and has been seen in a lot of games recently. Switch players may be familiar with similar systems in games like Payday 2 or Warframe. I will say though that this change in the overall game design is a bit jarring, since it is very different from previous games, and I can imagine some people will find this change to be a step in the opposite direction. Especially since these grindy types of RPG shooters tend to be full of filler content designed to keep you playing as long as possible, with only tiny droplets of progress in the story and world along the way. To keep things short, I'll wrap up with how I feel about this particular Switch port. Just like Doom and Wolfenstein 2, Youngblood was brought to Switch by the ever-talented team at Panic Button. And it has just about everything you'd want from a Switch port, including nice little bonuses like gyro aiming and direct voice chat through the console instead of the Switch Online app. One thing missing that I find disappointing is the lack of offline local wireless play. You'd think a co-op heavy game would allow 2 players with 2 copies of the game and 2 Switches to be able to play with each other without the need for an internet connection, but sadly is not the case. Last is the graphics and performance, and yeah, this is about what I'd expect. Despite the $30 price tag, Youngblood really pushes the id Tech 6 engine that was used in Wolfenstein 2. Levels and environments are larger with a lot more detail and things going on. So on one hand, Youngblood is both a much more technically impressive game, but at the cost of looking a bit smudgier and the game's frame rate dipping semi-frequently. Following the trend of other panic button ports, I imagine some kind of patch will release in the next month or two, boosting both performance and resolution. Even when these ports release with imperfect performance, I've never felt that these games were unplayable or too ugly like some people do. But I do feel like Youngblood teeters this line very closely, and I would not blame people for skipping out on this version entirely or until news of an optimization patch come out. But I've honestly played worse. Anyways, that's just my quick thoughts on Youngblood so far. I may have a full review up in a week or two when I finally get around to finishing the game, but I guess we'll see.